stood. 1986, mystery, mysterious, Maserati in the mix. Here's where I stood. 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 SXX777 1986. Mystery, mysterious, Maserati in the mix. It was in Brooklyn where you sung your song, going backwards towards the bridge all along. With neon lights flashing, it's a city of dreams. Echoes of the night rippling through the streams. Twinkling, twinkling night, oh starry sky. Spangled starlights shimmering high. A saint of your salvation hangs on a Dalmatian. New York City, graveyard cloak, Little Red Riding Hood. Here's where I stood. 1986, mystery, mysterious, Maserati in the mix. Here's where I stood. It wasn't Brooklyn where you sung your song, going backwards towards the bridge all along. With neon lights flashing, it's a city of dreams. Echoes of the night rippling through the streams. Twinkling, twinkling night, oh starry sky. Spangled starlights shimmering high. Here's where I stood. 1986, mystery, mysterious, Maserati in the mix. Here's where I stood. Here's where I stood.
Tinsel gods and saints, royalty, luxury, design, angels, devils, fairy tale, societies, fire, Tinsel Moon Magazine X Snow White, blessings, mortals/immortals, artists, fashion lovers, blessed, Dior palette, protected by light, stars, goddesses, aurora borealis, nyx, songs, melodies, poetry. It is suggested that Walpurgis Night is linked with older May Day festivals in Northern Europe, which also involved lighting bonfires at night, for example the Gaelic festival Beltane. German Americans are people who have full or partial German ancestry and are citizens of the United States. German Americans are the largest self-reported ancestry group in the United States. The most dense German American populations are in the German belt of Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. The Amish and Mennonite communities in the northeastern U.S. are examples of German American culture. The first significant numbers of German immigrants arrived in the United States in the 1680s in New York and Pennsylvania. The Brothers Grimm's work is considered to be the inspiration for many of the fairy tales that are popular today. The German version of the tale of Snow White is Schneewittchen, which translates to Little Snow White. The Brothers Grimm published the story in their 1812 collection Grimm's Fairy Tales. The story includes many elements that are still familiar today, such as the evil queen, the seven dwarfs, the glass coffin, and the poisoned apple. The original German title was Schneewittchen. The modern spelling is Schneewittchen. The Grimms completed their final revision of the story in 1854, which can be found in the 1857 version of Grimm's Fairy Tales. Snow White. The Brothers Grimm also wrote Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, and Sleeping Beauty.
Last night, the stage felt like a club. Damn lava rock underneath my flow. Books so black, diamonds in sight. Magnetic glowing volcano halo bright.
Iceland, it's icy like a crazy fire. Falling to the desire in the dragon dome. Welcome to the forest, welcome to the sea. The ocean, a mesmerizing journey. Chocolate cheesecake, destiny awaits. In the fairy's paradise, let's escape the fates.
Champagne, let's pop and celebrate. A decorated face, clashing with fate. Old cold rap, tight and rock salts embrace. White ash, blue silver, swan lakes grace.
In Francis Plains, let the night persist as memories dwell in the dreamlike mist. Welcome to the forest, welcome to the sea. The ocean, a mesmerizing journey. Chocolate cheesecake, destiny awaits. In the fairy's paradise, let's escape the fates. Under glittering stars, as the dawn draws near, we dance in pure freedom, casting off fear.
Last night, the stage felt like a glow. Damn lava rock underneath my flow. Cobblestone, black diamonds in sight. Magnetic glowing volcano halo bright. Iceland, it's icy like a crazy fire. Fire, clear desire in the dragon dome.
Welcome to the forest, welcome to the sea. The ocean, a mesmerizing journey. Chocolate cheesecake, destiny awaits. In the fairy's
Okay, you go.
Wilhelm Grimm, one of the brothers Grimm, revised the stories they collected, adding dark details and improving the prose. In the German version of Snow White, known as Schneewittchen, a beautiful young princess, Snow White, is pursued by her jealous stepmother, a queen who is obsessed with being the fairest in the land. When the queen learns Snow White is more beautiful, she orders a huntsman to kill her, but he lets her escape into the forest where she finds refuge with 7 dwarfs, only to be tricked and poisoned by the queen. All this, only to be tricked and poisoned by the queen with a magical apple, ultimately being saved by a prince who awakens her with true love's kiss. The story of Snow White and Rose Red, another fairy tale collected by the brothers Grimm, is different from the story of Snow White. The prince's rescue. A prince finds Snow White and awakens her with a kiss. The 7 dwarfs. Snow White finds shelter and companionship with the 7 dwarfs in the forest. Key points about the German Snow White story. The jealous queen. The central conflict stems from the queen's extreme vanity and desire to remain the most beautiful woman. The magic mirror. The queen consults a magic mirror to confirm her status as the fairest. The poisoned apple. The queen disguises a poisoned apple to trick Snow White.
Лед трещит. Соберись. В сне исчезнет вся красота.
The ice is cracking. Pull yourself together. In a dream all beauty will disappear. In some versions of the story, the mirror is replaced by a person, animal, or the moon, revealing who is the fairest after Snow White's marriage. The mirror tells the evil queen that the young queen is the most beautiful, revealing Snow White's location. The mirror tells the evil queen where Snow White is. The tale of the dead princess and the 7 knights, a version of the fairy tale by Pushkin that includes symbolism rooted in Slavic mythology and Christianity. Sneguroka, a Russian fairy tale character known as the Snow Maiden or Snegurka. The Russian edition of Snow White is titled Belosneska. This is an 1833 poem by Alexander Pushkin telling a fairy tale of Prince Yelisei's search for his love, the Tsarevna, princess, who has been cast out by her stepmother. While the story resembles the Little Snow White tale from the Grimm's fairy tales, it is based around national Russian folklore, like Pushkin's other fairy tales in verse, inspired by the childhood tales told by his nurse Irina Rodionovna at the Mikhailovskoye village. Fables and Legends of the Samara Region, 1884, by Dmitry Sadovnikov, tale number 14, and Great Russian Fairy Tales of the Vyotka Governorate, 1915, by Dmitry Zelenin, tale number 52. Similar stories could be found in the Russian Fairy Tales collection by Alexander Afanasiev, tales number 210 and 211, Great Russian Fairy Tales collection, 1861, by Ivan Kodyakov, tale number 45. A Tsar goes on a voyage and leaves his beautiful Tsarina behind. She spends days and nights waiting for him by the window, and in 9 months gives birth to their daughter. Next morning her husband returns, and she dies from happiness and exhaustion the same day. In a year the Tsar marries another woman, not only smart and beautiful, but also arrogant and jealous. The night before the wedding, the Tsarina asks her magic mirror whether she is still the sweetest and prettiest of them all, but the mirror points at the Tsarevna, which drives the woman mad. She orders the servant girl Chanavka to take her stepdaughter into the heart of the forest, tie her down and leave her to the wolves. Chanavka follows the orders, but as they go deep into the forest, the Tsarevna starts begging Chanavka to spare her life. She enters the hut, but doesn't find anyone inside, so she cleans everything up and goes to sleep. After a while, 7 bogaters arrive for a dinner. They kindly greet and feed the girl, calling her their sister. Meanwhile, the Tsarevna wanders through the forest and stumbles across a terem guarded by a dog, which she immediately befriends. Chernavka, who sympathizes with the girl, leaves her untied and lies to the mistress on return. Soon the news of the missing bride reaches the prince, who immediately goes on a quest to find her. From the way she talks deduce that she must be at Tsarevna. The Tsarevna stays with her newly found brothers, looking after the house while they hunt in the forest or fight foreign invaders. The same day, the Tsarina learns of her death. They ride to the palace and meet the Tsarina, who is already aware of the wonderful resurrection of her stepdaughter. But as she sees the Tsarevna, she falls dead in agony. He then asks the moon, which aids him to the wind. As he asks the wind, it tells him about the cave with the crystal coffin where his bride lies. Yelisei finds the cave and hits the coffin with all his strength, causing it to break into pieces and his bride to come alive. Meanwhile, the Prince Yelisei rides around the world, asking everyone whether they saw his lost bride. At the end, he decides to ask the sun, which aids him to the moon. As soon as the Tsarevna bites the apple, she gets poisoned and dies. The dog leads the bogaters to her, bites the poisoned apple in anger, and also dies, revealing the cause of the tragedy. They put the girl into a crystal coffin and bring her to a cave. After some time, the evil Tsarina discovers that her stepdaughter is still alive with the help of the magic mirror. She orders Chernavka to get rid of the Tsarevna under pain of death. The servant girl dresses as a nun and travels to the house of the 7 bogaters. She is met by the barking dog, who refuses to let her approach, but the Tsarevna throws her some bread anyway. In return, the nun throws her an apple and disappears. www.x.com/wonderofscience/status/183313515094009. There's more than 45,000 galaxies visible in this photo, taken by NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. www.x.com/UHD2020/status/1833166100537720852. www.x.com/polaris program/status/1833447998887522327. www.x.com/ESA/status/1833119223075197352. I thank the Republic of Panama for joining the joint communiqué on the Foundations of Peace, adopted at the inaugural Peace Summit in Switzerland. We look forward to deepening friendly dialogue and cooperation with the Caribbean states. www.x.com/Zelenskiyua. Listen to the spectacular cosmic vista of 30 Doradus, one of the largest and brightest regions of star formation close to the Milky Way. Musical notes. www.x.com/NASA_Marshall.
In the shadows of the night, whispers untold, and a grass commands her heart made of cold. She gazes at the prince with a cunning delight. Take an acre of land and plant in the twilight. With a flick of her wrist, the fate she weaves. Mysteries linger on this Hallows Eve. Under the stars, the spirits believe. The whispering winds in a dance of fate. Together we'll break this curse before it's too late. Laurel steps in, a comforting gaze. He soothes the young prince through this dark winding maze. Fear not the task, for the dawn will come bright, and the seeds that you sow will sprout into light. By the sisters' ring they share a secret bond. Mysteries linger on this Hallows Eve. Under the stars the spirits believe. The whispering winds in a dance of fate together will break this curse before it's too late. The sisters' ring, they share a secret bond. As the moon fades, new beginnings arise. In the heart of darkness, love never dies. In the shadows of the night, whispers untold, an ogress commands, her heart made of cold. She gazes at the prince, the cunning delight, dig an acre of land and plant in the twilight. With a flick of her wrist, the fate she weaves. Mysteries linger on this Hallows Eve. Under the stars, the spirits believe. The whispering winds in a dance of fate together will break this curse before it's too late. Laurel steps in, a comforting gaze. He soothes the young prince through this dark winding maze. Fear not the task, for the dawn will come bright, and the seeds that you sow will sprout into light. By the sisters' ring they share a secret bond. Mysteries linger on this Hallows Eve. Under the stars the spirits believe. The whispering winds in a dance of fate together will break this curse before it's too late. As the moon fades, new beginnings arise. In the heart of darkness, love never dies.
Okay, I'm gonna know what happened to feel like miserable. Leave here on. Angels chorus. Ooh, oh, you're so gorgeous. A gravel cemetery, I see men chance to be doubt. Melody spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. Moon. I do or don't you? Lusting the spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. This melody spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. Death Fume Temple, Sanctuary, Savior save me, saved by eerie howling. Okay, I'm gonna go to what happened to feel like miserable. Leave here and on. Chance to be doubt. Melody spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. Moon. I do or don't you? Lusting the spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. This melody spinning, I'm caught in your gaze. In shadows we dance, lost in the haze. Death Fume Temple, Sanctuary, Savior save me, saved by eerie howling.
Horned moths include the following species: hornet moth, Caesia apiformis, a large moth native to Europe and the Middle East, with protective coloration resembling a hornet. Nematocampa resistaria, filament bearer found in North America, from British Columbia to Nova Scotia, south to Florida and California. Lesothoceratid, long-horned moths, a family of small moths found worldwide, with the majority in the Indo-Malayan and Palearctic realms. The most prominent example is the story of King Midas, where his wish to turn everything he touched to gold is often interpreted as a metaphor for greed and the destructive power of excessive wealth, but the ability to reverse the curse represents a form of resurrection. In Greek mythology, the golden fleece is another symbol associated with rebirth and renewal, as Jason's quest to retrieve it was seen as a journey of transformation and overcoming obstacles. Gold is often seen as a symbol of immortality, wealth, and divine power in many cultures, making it a fitting element for stories about resurrection and rebirth. This, as the ability to turn things to gold ultimately became a curse when he could no longer eat or drink due to everything becoming gold around him. Thus, the resurrection aspect would be the act of reversing the curse and returning to a normal life, signifying a kind of rebirth. The dove usually is for peace and the raven is for war. In folklore, the concept of gold resurrection is often associated with the myth of King Midas, where his golden touch could turn anything he touched into gold, but also implied a symbolic death and rebirth. Gold is mentioned in Greek mythology for examples as varied as King Midas, the golden fleece stolen by Jason, who possessed the power of resurrection, through to the golden apples of Hesperides. The outside was a green grass farmland with apple trees, and it was a very quiet area, but you could still hear a deer with his antlers scraping wood from the indoors. I was trying to buy a bedroom right next to my sister, who she died in her sleep, and she was there still sleeping beautifully. The sound did not wake her resting. There was a very large deer with antlers in my dream. He was living in a nearly empty wooden cabins, walking in a hall of walls in between. There was once a king and queen who wished dearly for a child, and one day while the woman was sitting alone by the side of a waterfall, a crab began to speak, and told her that her wish would be granted. The queen consented to be led to the land of the fairies, and the crab became an old woman to guide her. Though it was the same path the queen usually traveled by, everything was changed to be more lush and magnificent. 6 fairies approached from their palace to announce that soon she would have a little daughter, and gave her 6 flowers made of precious stones. Soon after, a baby girl was born, named Desiree, and the queen wished to thank the fairies and invited them to her palace by uttering each of their names to the crystal flowers. As a young girl visiting my grandparents in India, my grandfather took me on his morning walks, where he would discuss the importance of fighting for equality and fighting corruption. He was a retired civil servant who had been part of the movement to win India's independence. My grandmother traveled across India, bullhorn in hand, to speak with women about accessing birth control. Their commitment to public service and fight for a better future live on in me today. Happy National Grandparents' Day to all the grandparents who helped shape and inspire the next generation. The prince was impatient and disappointed that the princess had not come back with the embassy, and so fell ill again. The king grew worried and sent another message to Desiree's father to plead for the marriage to happen at once, and the girl came up with a plan. She proposed that at night she ride in a carriage with no windows, and arrive before dawn to remain in an underground chamber at the prince's castle. Several days later, the princess stepped into the carriage with her faithful maid of honor, named Eglantine, her lady-in-waiting, who had also fallen in love with the prince and was named Sarisette, and Sarisette's mother. The woman that the prince had been previously betrothed to was named Nara, and her godmother was the fairy of the fountain, who wished for the princess to be ill-fated and so put bad thoughts into the minds of Sarisette and her mother. While they were in the thick forest, the two cut a hole into the side of the carriage, and as they entered the open country, Desiree was hit with sunlight. She sprang out as a white doe, and Sarisette put on the clothes of the princess, so that when she arrived at the prince's castle she would appear as his bride. She was irate and intended to kill the child, but after the other fairies flattered her, she instead cast a curse that if the girl was to see one ray of daylight before her 15th birthday, she would come to an unlucky fate. After she left, the fairies conjured up a beautiful palace with no windows, which the princess was brought up in. Each of the fairies loved her, but most of all the fairy Tulip, who grew wary as the girl's 15th birthday approached. She warned the queen of her apprehension, and told her to send out portraits of the princess to all the neighboring courts to prepare her for marriage. All the princes fell in love with her, but one above all others became obsessed with her image and impatiently demanded her.
Black rose pagans bloom, feathered whispers call from Gabriel's touch, where dragon shadows fall. Embers dance on toadstools, a silver metal spin. In courts form faces where enchantments begin. Переливчатые миры, темная бездна, искренне скрыта в сердце. White sea rose, inlet, sweet peach cake, red diamond, earthquakes, emerald dreams awake. So in the glow of night, ice wings, cubic warmth, jewel smart in flight. Frozen auroras spin the Viking skies, garnet faceted stories caught in time's disguise. Nightmares float on rivers, swans glide in the mist, hiding hope in shadows where dreams coexist. Historical horror live inside my mind. The prices change, the beauties intertwine. White sea rose, inlet, sweet peach cake, red diamond, earthquakes, emerald dreams awake. So in the glow of night, ice queens, cubic warmth, jewel spark in flight.
When she could run no more, the prince took care of her. But when it began to grow dark and he went down to the stream, she ran away to her room in the hut and lamented to Eglantine. They saw each other the next day as well, and he shot an arrow through her leg in order to capture her, but felt so horrible for wounding her that he carried her as far as he could to the hut, and left her tied beneath a tree as he went ahead for help. Eglantine found her and went to free her, when the prince appeared and accused her of stealing, and Eglantine proved that it was her doe by asking the princess to put her arms around her neck. She carried the doe back to the hut, and she and the prince were surprised to find that the other was also staying there. That night Becasig told the prince that he was sure Eglantine was the maid of honor, and so the two cut a small hole in the wall, and observed the princess back in her natural form. The prince knocked on their door and was let in, and the two lovers recognized each other and spent the whole night together. In the morning they found that her spell had been broken, and learned that the old woman who owned the hut was really the fairy Tulip. There was a grand wedding feast, and Sarisette and her mother were shipped to a small island to work hard for their living. You can either be a dove or a raven in this next world. The raven is the icy death realm and the dove is the sun firelight, German fairy tale. Heaven versus hell. The White Doe or The Doe in the Woods is a French literary fairy tale written by Madame d'Aulnoy. Andrew Lang included it in the Orange Fairy Book. The Dove, fairy tale. A poor old woman had to beg hard to get a pot full of beans. A prince and his friends rode by and broke the pot in a game. She cursed him to fall in love with an ogress's daughter. Within hours, he became lost in a wood and lost his attendants, and found a girl mocking snails. He fell in love at sight, and the girl, Philodoro, also fell in love with him. He was too tongue-tied to woo, and the ogress caught him. He tried to strike her, but could not move. She ordered him to dig an acre of land and sow it by evening. Philodoro comforted him. When he heard she had magic, he asked why they could not leave. She answered a conjunction of the stars prevented it, but would go. When the ogress returned in the evening, calling Philodoro to throw down her hair so that she could climb it, the land was ready. The next day, she set him to split 7 stacks of wood, and Philodoro did it again. The third day, the ogress suspected Philodoro and set the prince to empty a cistern. Philodoro said that they must flee and dug a hole to an underground passage, and they ran away. The prince did not want to bring her to his palace afoot and dressed this way, so he went to get suitable clothing and a carriage. The ogress cursed him to forget her as soon as he was kissed, and when he reached the castle, his mother kissed him. He could no longer explain what had happened to him, and agreed to marry as his mother wished. When Philodoro heard about the wedding, she disguised herself as a man and went to the castle where she was hired as a kitchen boy. When the pie which Philodoro had made is carved, out flies a dove who reminds the prince about everything Philodoro has done for him. Once the dove has flown away, the prince has the kitchen boy who made the pie brought before him. Philodoro falls before the prince's feet. He at once recognizes her and declares to his that she would be the one he would marry. His mother wants merely what the prince desires, while the chosen bride admits to wanting to not be wed but return to Flanders. Whereupon, Philodoro and the prince are wed. Citation of a treaty. International agreement generally includes 1. Name of the agreement, 2. Parties to the agreement, if applicable, 3. Subdivisions, if citing only part of an agreement, 4. Date of signing, and 5. The sources where the treaty or agreement can be found. Homepage The Blue Book online. Blue Book as a standard. The Blue Book is a widely used guide for citing international legal materials, including rules for citing treaties, international organizations, and foreign court decisions. Blue Book for citing foreign and international materials, including treaties, UN documents, and foreign court cases. Kendrick Lamar. Super Bowl 59 halftime show.
In der Nacht funkeln die Sterne so hell und klar, tanzend den Tisch wie beim Ball, ganz wunderbar. Die Cinderellas träumen in Kleidern so fein, Marshmallows und Pilze in dieser Welt voll Schein. Ein Hauch von Gothic-Liebe blüht im Bruch. Helles Glas, Feuer, rote Rosen blühen, Gothic-Klänge, die die Seele verführen. Funkelndes Wasser, das den Himmel küsst, in diesen Momenten, wo der Wahnsinn küsst. Gothic-Melodien treiben uns weit und hoch. In der Walpurgisnacht tanzen wir endlos und froh.
In the moonlight there, the shadows dance. Marshmallows pop in a sweet romance. Cactus is guarding a lily's embrace. Starlit dreams in a hollow space. A sprinkle of salt, we're facing our fate. Spinning through a world we create.
Doves and ravens in the night sky swirl. A love so fierce, in this dance we twirl. From the east they come with beats from the west. In the circle of light we find our quest. Doves and ravens in the night sky swirl. A love so fierce,
spread of Eastern Orthodoxy began in the eastern area of the Mediterranean basin within Byzantine Greek culture. Its communities share an understanding, teaching and offices of great similarity, with a strong sense of seeing each other as parts of one church. Eastern Orthodox Christians believe in the Trinity, three distinct, divine persons, hypostases, without overlap or modality among them, who each fully share in one divine essence, ousia, Greek, uncreated, immaterial, and eternal. The Father is eternal, neither begotten nor proceeding from any. The Son is eternal and begotten of the Father, and the Holy Spirit is eternal and proceeds from the Father. Eastern Orthodox Christians believe in a monotheistic conception of God. God is only one. When Eastern Orthodox Christians refer to fallen nature, they do not mean that human nature has become evil in itself. Human nature is still formed in the image of God. Humans are still God's creation, and God has never created anything evil, but fallen nature remains open to evil intents and actions. It is sometimes said among the Eastern Orthodox that humans are inclined to sin, that is, people find some sinful things attractive. It is the nature of temptation to make sinful things seem the more attractive, and it is the fallen nature of humans that seeks or succumbs to the attraction. Eastern Orthodox Christians reject the Augustinian position that the descendants of Adam and Eve are actually guilty of the original sin of their ancestors. Among Augustine's most important works are The City of God, De Doctrina Christiana, and Confessions. Plato and Plotinus influenced Augustine in many ways, and he is considered a Neoplatonic philosopher. Because of his special importance, St. Augustine's influence was widespread. It could be said on the one hand that all the roads of Latin Christian literature led to Hippo, today Anabar, on the coast of Algeria, the place where he was bishop from 395 to his death in 430, and, on the other, that from this city of Roman Africa, many other roads of later Christianity and of Western culture itself branched out. Early on New Year's morning, householders drink and then sprinkle magic water from a dead and living ford around the house. Our dead and living ford refers to a river ford that is routinely crossed by both the living and the dead. An old hogmanay, New Year's, custom in the Highlands of Scotland, which has survived to a small extent and seen some degree of revival, is to celebrate hogmanay with the seining of the household and livestock. Revolt is defined as a renouncing of allegiance, especially to a government or party, a determined armed uprising, a movement or expression of vigorous dissent, to break away from or rise against constituted authority, rebel, or mutiny, to protest against authority, often involving violence. Antithesis is a literary device that positions opposite ideas parallel to each other. Know your telling Christian they are which the exact antithesis. And these Christians' prayers they used cauldrons sometime. To mention any God's existence besides the supreme God to a Christian you are in fact to this day still consider a witch. American for the Christian paranormal everything unchristian is a demonic influence. Seining a household with copious amounts of the smoke of burning juniper was traditionally used in healing rites, where the evil eye has been suspected. Seining is a common practice in more modern traditions based on Scottish folklore, such as blessing and protecting children and other family members. While many of the surviving seining prayers and charms are actually Christian in nature. In Shetland, the Scottish folklorist F. Marion McNeill also refers to the custom of making the sign of Thor's hammer to seine the goblet that was passed around at New Year's celebrations. Seining can also refer to less formal customs like making religious signs to protect against evil, such as the sign of the cross. While the ceremonial gestures can vary by spiritual or religious tradition, the prayers and poetry are usually traditional pieces in Gaelic. Water that has been blessed in some fashion is sprinkled, or used for anointing. Traditional seining rites usually involve the use of water and smoke, accompanied by ritual gestures and spoken or sung poetry and prayers. Seining is a Scots word for blessing, protecting, or consecrating. Scottish weapons Moth Moon Magazine x Irish Sticks. The Gothic castle on Ireland's west coast with an eccentric antique collection. www.msn.com/en-travel/travel/trip-ideas/the Gothic-castle-on-Ireland-s-west-coast-with-eccentric-antique collection. Spears were widely used by Celtic warriors. A functional weapon could be constructed from sharpened wood, but many more sophisticated bronze or iron weapons were used both in warfare and for ceremonial purposes. Larger spears were used for close thrusting fighting and lighter javelins used as a throwing weapon. The Gazem spear has a wide blade and incorporates secondary tangs which were useful in hooking the enemy shields and armor. They also inflicted a more damaging wound. The spearhead is constructed from iron with inlaid bronze fish design which would probably indicate ceremonial use. The base of the oak shaft also incorporates an iron spike. Large numbers of flint and bone arrowheads have been found indicating that the bow and arrow was widely used. The bow is constructed of organic material, so fewer examples remain. Samples indicate that the bow would be similar to the design as we understand it today. The bow and arrow could be constructed from any locally available materials, but some examples indicate that material such as yew for the bow was imported. What weapons did the Scottish use in fighting? Lochaber axe, basket sword, Highland dirk, Highland targe, down pistol, firelock musket, field gun, powder horn. For centuries the backbone of any Gaelic Irish army were these lightly armed foot soldiers. Seaton were usually armed with a spear, gay, or sword, claydine, long dagger, scion, bow, bogger, and a set of javelins, or darts, garin. This long, naturally formed branch of wood is called a shillelagh, shillelagh. A shillelagh is an Irish tool which functions as a walking stick, dueling weapon, and club all in one. They are designed to be lightweight for walking, but sturdy enough to withstand a duel. In Irish culture, sticks, particularly the shillelagh, hold significant symbolic and practical value. The shillelagh is a type of wooden walking stick and club, traditionally made from blackthorn or oak. It has become an iconic symbol of Irish identity, representing strength, resilience, and heritage. Historically, the shillelagh was used for self-defense and in traditional stick-fighting practices known as bateracht. Over time, it has also come to symbolize the enduring spirit of the Irish people and is often featured in Irish artwork, literature, and national emblems. Gaelic warfare. Healing properties. In addition to their use as a weapon, shillelaghs were also thought to have healing properties. In the past, Irish rebels used shillelaghs as weapons against their British oppressors, and the stick became a symbol of Irish resistance and independence. Then they broke up all the sticks and turned them into real dangerous weapons. The ways that the Romans colonized areas included large-scale migration. The Romans colonized areas through large-scale migration.
Military presence. The Romans colonized areas through a substantial military presence. Imperial culture. The Romans colonized areas through an incorporative imperial culture. The word ecolonism comes from the Latin word colonus, which was used to describe tenant farmers in the Roman Empire. People who are educated by the Roman hierarchy, Americans. Because they didn't understand the drawings with the spears, sticks, etc., so it was all nothing but witchcraft. Anything Roman influenced should definitely be redetermined as any historical value due to the underlying xenophobia. Just as the early American colonies destroyed natives and took their sage, and to this day they sell sage as witchcraft. These colonies were made up of Roman citizens who lived as independent communities on the land. The Romans established colonies for a variety of reasons. Romans annihilated certain culture and rewrote it for themselves. I'm not sure why people can really think these Christian symbols and Celtic symbols will work for them, some that they sell it in the witchcraft section. Mine own family history as well. The term misappropriation refers to the stealing of something, usually money, that was not meant for the thief, but which he used for his own personal gain. It can also refer to public corruption. Public corruption involves a breach of public trust and or abuse of position by government officials for personal gain. Roman colonialism was the practice of establishing settlements in conquered territories by the Roman Empire. A Roman colonia, PL, colonii, was originally a settlement of Roman citizens, establishing a Roman outpost in federated or conquered territory for the purpose of securing it. Eventually, however, the term came to denote the highest status of a Roman city. It is also the origin of the modern term e-colony. Key points about Roman colonization. Mediterranean dominance. Rome's primary area of colonization was the Mediterranean region, allowing them to influence many different cultures. Cultural assimilation. Romans often adopted aspects of the cultures they conquered, particularly heavily integrating Greek culture into their own. Military expansion. Roman military power was the driving force behind their colonization efforts, allowing them to conquer vast territories. People that views Celtic history as witchcraft is probably influenced somehow by Roman colonialism. They did this to several cultures, the Romans, and they took the Celtic alphabet and now say it's all witchcraft due to xenophobia. Some Roman colonizers themselves described the Celts as nothing but barbaric witches when it was not the case at all. Roman colonizers considered the cultures they conquered as barbaric and purposely twisted the truth. The Iberians in Spain, the peoples of the Balkans, Egyptians in North Africa, and various cultures in the Middle East, including those in Anatolia and parts of Mesopotamia. The Roman Empire colonized a wide range of cultures, including the Greeks in southern Italy, Magna Graecia, the Etruscans in central Italy, the Carthaginians in North Africa, the Gauls in modern-day France. This is a large reason those Celtic peoples, the Scottish, the Irish ESP is considered a witchcraft to people with no historical knowledge of the time frame or area, folklore, customs, or without bias. We immediately began working to fulfill all the agreements with our partners that we reached this week, following the Ramstein meeting and key talks in Germany and Italy. Our defense minister and military also held meetings in France, the UK, and Germany. Ukraine. The use of armoured infantry in Gaelic Ireland from the 9th century on came as a counter to the mail-clad Vikings. The arrival of the heavily armoured Norse Gaelic mercenary gallowglasses in the early 13th century was in response to the Norman invasion of Ireland and the Anglo-Normans' use of heavily armoured men-at-arms and knights. Although the Irish did have knights heavily armoured soldiers prior to the gallowglass, these were called ridair in Irish meaning knight as mentioned in the Visio Tnugdali. The Irish made good use of difficult country and of field fortifications, digging trenches and aplashing trees into impenetrable barrows, often in connection with an ambush. The gallowglass. These were originally Scots mercenaries, but by the 16th century their clans or septs had often been settled in Ireland for 2 or 3 centuries. The most famous were the MacDonalds and the McSweeneys. They were still mercenaries, but often owed loyalty to a particular noble. In fact, in 1568 there were 3 septs of the Queen Majesty's gallowglasses. They usually wore an iron bassinet, and either a mail shirt or a short cape of mail over a padded quilted coat called a cotoneer, and their characteristic weapon was a heavy 2-handed axe, up to 6 feet long, which could chop the enemy's head off with a single blow. It was still used in 1588 when MacLarglan Cab killed 80 Spaniards from the Armada with one. Gallowglasses were organised in a battles of 80 or 87 men, but each gallowglass was accompanied by 2 boys, who carried his supplies, armour, and his secondary weapons, 3 light Irish javelins or darts. Bonnets might have been armed with the sparthax, but the usual weapons were javelins or darts, of which each kern had a handful. Even the English admitted that the Irish were extraordinarily skilled with this weapon, but said it was a more noisome, especially to the horse, than deadly. A small proportion of the average Irish force, the cavalry, would normally be made up of gentry. They were equipped with a helmet with a strange turned-up nasal, mail shirt, sword and shield, but their chief weapon was a longish light spear held in the middle and used overarm either for stabbing or throwing, not couched as a lance. These adaptations and developments brought regular use of other weapons such as lances, poleaxes like the Dane axe, Lochaber axe, sparthax, and swords like the arming sword and two-handed swords similar to the Scottish claymore. Many of the medieval swords found in Ireland today are unlikely to be of native manufacture, given many of the pommels and crossguard decoration is not of Gaelic origin. By the time of Brian Borumer and Mael Secnail, Irish kings were taking large armies on campaign over long distances and using naval forces in tandem with land forces. From the 11th century on, kings maintained small permanent fighting forces known as Lucht Taige troops of the household, who were often given houses and land on the king's mensal land. These were well-trained and equipped professional soldiers made up of infantry and cavalry. Irish flags. Flags shown in a print of the Irish force at the Battle of Erne Fords in 1593. Infantry flag on left, cavalry on right. Colours not known. The cavalry flag may be in Irish cross. Something similar in red on white was carried by the 17th century Catholic Confederates. The cross of St. Patrick was not apparently considered as a symbol of Ireland at the time. Two national flags which may have been used in the 16th century are a blue flag with 3 gold crowns, and the traditional Irish harp in gold, probably then on a blue ground.
In the Desmond Rebellion, 1579–83, the rebels had the Pope's banner, presumably red with the crossed keys of St. Peter in silver and gold beneath the triple crown of the papacy. Gia Sail, Spear of Assel, also known as the Lightning Spear, or simply Luffa's Spear. The Gia Sail was one of the 4 treasures or jewels of the Tuatha De Danann. Cleim Sol Ace, Sword of Nuada, the king of the gods in Irish mythology. Dyrnwyn, Sword of Ridderch Hale in Welsh legend. When drawn, it blazed with fire. If drawn by a worthy man, the fire would help him in his cause, but its fire would burn the man who drew it for an unworthy purpose. Skafnung was the sword of legendary Danish king Rolf Kraki. The best of all swords that have been carried in northern lands, it was renowned for supernatural sharpness and hardness, as well as for being imbued with the spirits of the kings. Thunderbolt, as wielded by various mythological deities such as Zeus. Vajra, a composite weapon made from the bones of a willing sage used by Indra. Ead lends the sword to Thorkel to kill the outlaw Grim, who had killed Ead's son. Thorkel fought Grim, but the two became friends, and Thorkel never returned the sword to Ead. Gjeller dies in Denmark returning from a pilgrimage to Rome and is buried at Roskilde, and it seems Skafnung was buried with him, near where the sword was recovered from the burial mound in the first place, as the saga records that Gjeller had the sword with him, and it was not recovered afterward. Gaelic warfare was anything but stagnant, and was adaptive and ever-changing. By the time of the Tudor reconquest of Ireland, and the beginning of the end of the Gaelic era, the Irish had adopted continental pike and shot formations like those used by the continental armies of the Spanish, Swiss, and Germans, with formations consisting of pikemen mixed with musketeers and swordsmen. Indeed, from 1593 to 1601, the Gaelic Irish fought with the most up-to-date methods of warfare, including full reliance on firearms and modern military tactics. Indeed, cattle raiding was a social institution within Gaelic culture, and newly crowned kings would carry out raids on traditional rivals upon coronation. The Gaelic term Creech Rye or King's Raid was used to describe the event, implying it was a customary tradition. Especially following the arrival of the Vikings from Lachlan, who brought their own style of warfare, raiding, and settlements. Over time, these newcomers founded their own kingdom, began a dynastic line, and developed a distinct culture of their own. It's often stated that for the most part, the Gaelic Irish fought without armor, instead wearing saffron-colored belted tunics called lane, pronounced lainu, the plural being laint, pronounced laintu/lainchu. According to Gerald of Wales, who wrote Propaganda in the early 12th century, the Gaels preferred to not wear armor, as they deemed it burdensome to wear and one to be brave and honorable to fight without it. Arthurian legend. Excalibur, the sword King Arthur got from the Lady of the Lake. Gallowglass mercenaries of the early 13th century have been depicted as having worn mail tunics and steel burgonet helmets, but the overall majority of Gaelic warriors would have been protected only by a small shield. Gaelic shields were usually round, with a spindle-shaped boss, though later the regular iron boss models were introduced by the Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and Normans. A few shields were also oval in shape or square, but most of the native shields were small and round, like bucklers, to better enable agility and a quick escape. Starting in the late 16th century, an era of siege warfare began in Ireland. During this period, urban defense came to the forefront of Gaelic warfare and became increasingly important. Following shocking atrocities at the sack of Cashel and Oliver Cromwell's siege and massacre at Drogheda, Gaelic Irish rebels, realizing that they could not expect or trust any quarter to be given upon surrender, began to improvise and set traps for armies besieging their towns. At both the Siege of Clonmel and Siege of Charlemont, Irish rebel defenders were able to exact a heavy toll on English forces. During Clonmel, Cromwell's new model army and 8,000 men eventually took the town from its 2,000 Irish defenders, but not before suffering heavy losses of around 2,000 soldiers or a quarter of their total force, their largest ever loss in a single action. Initially, Kern or Seathern were members of individual tribes, but later, when the Vikings and English came to Ireland, they introduced new systems of billeting soldiers. The Kern became billeted soldiers and mercenaries who served the highest bidder. Because Kern were equipped and trained as light skirmishers, they faced a severe disadvantage in pitched battle. In battle, the Kern and lightly armed horsemen would charge the enemy line after intimidating them with shock tactics, war cries, horns, and pipes. Clarent, King Arthur's sword of peace. Also known as the coward's blade, as it is the sword Mordred, his son, stole and later used to kill King Arthur. Carnwenan, King Arthur's dagger. Gallatin, Gawaine's sword granted by the Lady of the Lake, said to make the wielder invincible under the sunlight. Pridwen, also Weimgarthucher, the shield of King Arthur, shares its name with the boat he sailed on to reach Avalon. Rongomiant, King Arthur's spear. The sword with the red hilt, used by Sir Balin, Sir Galahad, and Sir Lancelot. Any unworthy knight who wields it extensively is cursed to kill the man he loves most. Balin unknowingly kills his brother with it. The continuously bleeding lance which maimed the Fisher King is said to have dark powers. The sword with the strange hangings, it once belonged to David, and may only be drawn from its scabbard by Galahad, the worthiest of knights. Gaelic forces were so frequently at sea, especially the Dalriada Gaels, weaponry had to change. Javelins and slings became more uncommon, as they required too much space to launch, which the small currachs did not allow. Instead, more and more Gaels were armed with bows and arrows. Augustine considered the human race as a compact mass, a collective body, responsible in its unity and solidarity. Carrying out his system in all its logical consequences, he laid down the following rigid proposition as his doctrine. As all men have sinned in Adam, they are subject to the condemnation of God on account of this hereditary sin and the guilt thereof. Indian. ACI. A legendary divine lotus sword created in ancient times as the first weapon to destroy the enemies of the gods and restore Dharma. Chintu. A horse whip which looks like a crooked stick and is a typical attribute of Ayanar, Krishna in his aspect as Rajgopala, and Shiva with Nandi.